It's the oldest missing persons case in American history, with nothing left behind except for a single ominous clue carved into a wooden post. It's an unsolved enigma that continues to perplex historians to this day. Were they assimilated into a local native tribe? Did they simply move somewhere else? Or did something more sinister occur? Now, C4 Detective will dig through historical archives, review the latest recovered evidence, and then we will attempt to unravel the tangled web of theories regarding the disappearance of this first English-American colony. Join us, and together let's uncover the truth behind the lost colony of Roanoke. In 1587, a group of approximately 115 English colonists, led by Governor John White, established the first permanent American colony of English settlers on Roanoke Island, off the coast of present-day North Carolina. Among them were men, women, children, and entire families, all hoping to build a life in the New World. However, their dreams would soon turn into a nightmare. To fully explain what happened, we have to start this baffling story 2 years prior. Sir Walter Raleigh of England had been given a charter granting him control over the Virginia region in North America by Queen Elizabeth following the death of Raleigh's half-brother. The charter required Raleigh establish an English colony in the area by 1591 in order to maintain his claim. Raleigh's first attempt at this colony was in 1585, following an expedition in 1584. This colonial mission was headed by Ralph Lane, the colony's governor, with the mission itself led by Fleet Commander Sir Richard Grenville. Future Governor John White was also present during this first colony attempt, serving as an artist and map maker, with much of his preserved work based on this first trip. This initial colony consisted of just men, mostly explorers, sailors, and military personnel, with the expectation additional colonists would arrive later once it was established. The colony began setting up on North Roanoke Island, and the colonists spent several months exploring the area and meeting with various tribes, including the CROATOAN, who inhabited an island called CROATOAN some 50 miles south on what is today called Hatteras Island. Eventually, Grenville left on a resupply mission, while Lane and his colonists remained on Roanoke. During this time, increased tensions with other native populations, along with supply shortages waiting for Grenville, forced Lane and the others to abandon the colony by 1586, with Grenville arriving just 2 weeks later, only to discover everyone had departed back for England after learning of Lane's evacuation from some friendly natives. Grenville also left for England after this revelation, but left a contingent of 15 men behind in order to ensure Raleigh's claim on the territory would remain. Back in England, White helped to convince Raleigh to launch another colony attempt, this time with White as the colony's governor. This new attempt would depart England on May 8, 1587, and would now include families, including White's pregnant daughter Eleanor Dare and her husband, Ananias Dare. The plan was for the colony to set up at Chesapeake Bay this time, due to the tensions with Native Americans around Roanoke. However, the ship transporting the colonists would stop at Roanoke first to check on the 15 men who were left behind in the previous year. Unfortunately, their arrival at Roanoke would mark the settlers' first misfortune in their colonial endeavors. While White was preparing to meet with the 15 men stationed at Roanoke, he was informed by the flagship's pilot, Simon Fernandez, that White and his colonists would remain on Roanoke Island, and they would not be taken to Chesapeake Bay. History is not clear on why this event occurred, which seemingly amounted to mutiny, as White was also the captain of the flagship in addition to the colony's governor. However, White did not appear to challenge Fernandez or force him to take them to Chesapeake. There are some indications of pre-existing animosity between the two men, with some theories indicating that Fernandez might have been deliberately trying to sabotage the colony. Regardless of the reason, the colonists were now at Roanoke Island, at least for the time being. The colonists immediately got to work, as they had only limited provisions with them. The original plan was to begin planting food in the fertile grounds at Chesapeake Bay, but now the colonists had to contend with a different area altogether, while also having a greater concern for security, as one of the reasons Roanoke was not chosen was the potential hostile local native tribes in the area. Sure enough, not long after disembarking onto Roanoke, colonist George Howe was killed by a native while searching alone for crabs in Albemarle Sound. Despite this, White and his men soon located the site of the previous colony on the island. However, the fort had been dismantled and Grenville's 15 men were nowhere to be found. However, there were vacant houses still standing, which the colonists used to start building up a town. With the help of a native guide who had spent time in England, White's men were also able to re-establish contact with the Croatan tribe, who were one of the few English-friendly tribes in the area. The Croatan told White's men that a coalition of mainland tribes had attacked and killed Grenville's 15-man detachment. On August 18, 1587, White's daughter, Eleanor Dare, gave birth to a baby girl, christened Virginia, in honor of being the first Christian born in Virginia. Virginia Dare became the first known person of English descent born in America, with present-day Dare County in North Carolina named after her. Less than 10 days after Virginia's birth, the small fleet that brought the colonists to Roanoke was preparing to return to England. The colonists had made the decision to relocate the colony approximately 50 miles west, up Albemarle Sound. However, the colonists did not have enough supplies for the trip and only had a small boat at their disposal, which was incapable of transporting all of the colonists. Because of this, they urged John White to go back to England with the fleet for more supplies before they attempted to move the colony. They also likely wanted to ensure that any future resupply missions were able to get to them, as there was no guarantee Fernandez would tell Raleigh that they never made it to Chesapeake Bay. Against White's judgment, he agreed to head back to England. Before he left, White told the colonists that if for whatever reason they needed to relocate before he could come back, to leave him a message on where they would be headed. If relocation was forced or due to an emergency, White told them to also leave a symbol of a cross with their message to indicate duress. With everything set, White departed with the fleet on August 27, 1587, striving to return as soon as possible. Unfortunately, shortly after returning to England, war broke out with Spain, and Queen Elizabeth ordered all ships to remain in defense of England. White tried several times to return to Roanoke sooner, but was unable to secure a vessel to make the trip until 1590. However, despite it being 3 years later, White was hopeful everything would be okay with the colonists. White finally arrived back on Roanoke on August 18, 1590, 3 years to the date of his granddaughter's birthday. Upon approaching Roanoke, White thought he saw fires on the island as his ship approached, indicating the colony may have been alive and well. However, it was anything but a joyful occasion, as White witnessed in horror that the colony had seemingly vanished. All of the colonists were gone, and there was no one to be found. The site of the colony had been fortified, now surrounded by large wooden defense posts called palisades which were still standing. However, inside, the homes had all been dismantled and were missing. Precious goods, supplies, and personal effects were also nowhere to be found. The homes being dismantled and goods missing indicated that whatever happened, it seemed to be in an orderly fashion, as the colonists would not have had time to break everything down as they did if they had been forced out. Additionally, the palisades were intact, and there were no signs of any attack on the colony itself. Upon searching the area more, White and his men found the word CROATOAN carved into one of the palisades near the entrance. Additionally, the letters CRO were carved into a nearby tree. No other evidence was found, and before White could search further, a storm forced him and his ship to return to England. White was never able to return to search further, as he passed away in 1593, never knowing the fate of his family or the other colonists. To this day, the Lost Colony remains as the oldest missing persons cold case in American history. At first glance, the obvious fate of the Roanoke colonists would be that they relocated to Croatoan Island, on what is today known as Hatteras Island. However, many have argued that the Croatan tribe who inhabited the island could not have supported all of the colonists. Additionally, there has never been any definitive record of the colonists or their descendants making contact with any future American colonists. Others have also pointed out that the message left behind could have been to indicate that the Croatoan tribe may have been a part of an attack force that either killed or kidnapped the colonists, as opposed to indicating where they were headed. This leads into another popular theory, that the colonists were either killed or taken hostage by the hostile native tribes in the area. This theory is actually backed up by several factors. First, we know that the previous colony attempt had conflicts in the same area with local tribes, with the 15-man detachment previously left behind supposedly killed by those same tribes. We also know that Native American tribes would likely have been the only other people in the area who could have prevented the colonists from re-establishing contact, as the nearest Spanish fort was over 500 miles away. The fact is, there has never been any evidence which has directly shown the true fate of the colonists. That is, with one exception. On November 8, 1937, a man named Lewis Hammond visited Emory University in Georgia with a 21-pound stone, asking for help to interpret the markings on it. Hammond claimed to be a tourist from California traveling the country with his wife and stated that he found the stone in August of 1937 by the east bank of the Chowan River in North Carolina. The front and back of the stone contained carved messages, seemingly written in Elizabethan-era English. Translated, the stone contained the following message on the front face.
Ananias Dare and Virginia went hence to heaven, 1591. Any Englishman show this rock to John White, Governor of Virginia.
On the opposite side of the stone, the message continued.
Father, soon after you go for England, we came here. Only misery and war for 2 years. Above half dead these 2 years, more from sickness, being 24. A savage with a message of a ship came to us. Within a small space of time, they became frightened of revenge and ran all away. We believe it was not you. Soon after, the savages said spirits were angry. Suddenly they murdered all save 7. My child and Ananias, too, were slain with much misery. Buried all near 4 miles east of this river, upon a small hill. Names were written, all there on a rock. Put this there also. If a savage shows this to you, we promised you would give them great plenty presents.
Professors who reviewed the stone traveled with Hammond to the supposed site he found it in an attempt to find the precise location of its discovery. In addition, they attempted to locate the burial site, which the stone references. Neither could be found, and many expeditions and excavations in the area produce no further evidence. One of the professors, Haywood Pierce Jr., offered a reward for anyone to find further stones. Almost immediately, several men came forward claiming to have found the stones being searched for. Over the next few years, some of these same men, including Bill Eberhard, came forward with many more stones claiming he found. In total, 48 stones were produced, with most of them being claimed to be found in the same relative area in Georgia. Unfortunately, despite some television hosts claiming otherwise, every stone found since the first Hammond Dare stone has been almost definitively proven to be a fraud for a variety of reasons, not the least of which that Eberhard himself was a stone cutter by trade who came forward not long after the reward was announced, claiming to have found most of the stones conveniently near his house, while no one else could find evidence in the area. Experts have also reviewed these later stones and declared them to be forgeries, with recent examinations on them also revealing evidence of drill usage in the writing, technology that the colonists obviously would not have had. That said, the first Dare stone found by Hammond continues to divide experts even today. Experts on Old English have stated the language used on this stone is consistent with Elizabethan-era English used at the time of the Roanoke colony, while others claim that it seems to be copied from other authentic writing, while also pointing out that the EWD initials on the stone was not known to be used at the time. In addition to this, Hammond seems to have vanished after producing the stone, and he came forward with it several months after a resurgence in the Roanoke story due to a new play called The Lost Colony, debuting in honor of Virginia Dare's 350th birthday in 1937, a play which was also attended by President Franklin Roosevelt, putting the colony of Roanoke back into the public discourse. Without knowing if the first Dare stone provided by Hammond was authentic, C4 detective looked at other attempts throughout history which tried to provide an answer to the fate of the missing colonists. One of the more notable accounts was that of John Smith. Following the establishment of Jamestown in 1607, Smith was captured by the Powhatan tribe and met with their chief, who described to Smith a place called Okanahonan, where European men may reside, and Anoni, which featured colonial-style houses. Later, after Smith returned to the colony, he made arrangements to investigate this and another place called Panawiki, which was reportedly inhabited by European-dressed men. None of these expeditions were recorded to have found any evidence of the lost colony. In 1612, William Strachey, who had visited Jamestown in prior years, wrote that the lost colonists were slaughtered by the Powhatan tribe shortly before the founding of Jamestown. According to this account, the Powhatan leader was warned by his priests about a nation that would one day arise from the Chesapeake Bay to threaten his tribe, and therefore, the massacre was carried out to avert this prophecy. Interestingly, Strachey reported that 7 surviving colonists, 4 men, 2 boys, and a young woman, fled up the Chowan River, where they were captured by another tribe. This report of 7 surviving colonists, along with the location they fled being the Chowan River, matches the information provided in the first Dare Stone to include the location it was supposedly found. However, modern historians have questioned the Strachey theory, as it doesn't appear to align to Smith's account, and Strachey may have had an anti-Native American agenda he was trying to promote. One of the last recorded attempts in the colonial era to attempt to discover the fate of the lost colonists was that of John Lawson. From 1701 to 1709, Lawson explored North Carolina and visited Hatteras Island during his expeditions. On the island, he encountered the Hatteras people, where he found evidence of European activity there and in the Outer Banks. Lawson was impressed with the influence of English culture on the Hatteras tribe, and according to his writings, they reported that several of their ancestors had been white, with some of their tribe having gray eyes, supporting their claim. Lawson theorized that members of the 1587 colony had assimilated into this community after they lost hope of regaining contact with England. Another theory involves a local legend in Dare County that refers to an abandoned settlement called Beachland, located within what is today the Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge. This area has had unconfirmed reports of small coffins, some with Christian markings, creating a buzz that it may be related to the lost colony. Based on this legend, some have theorized Raleigh dispatched the 1587 colonists to harvest sassafras along the Alligator River, and that all records suggesting the colony's intended destination was Chesapeake Bay, and that England had lost contact with the colony, would have been falsified to conceal the operation from Spanish operatives and competitors. However, there is no substantiating evidence to this theory whatsoever. In addition, there are also indications that the colonists may have moved inland, like they had planned after landing at Roanoke. In November 2011, researchers noticed 2 corrective patches on a map produced by John White in 1585, known as the Virginia Pars map. The patches were west of the Albemarle Sound, at the start of the Roanoke and Chowan rivers, the same location approximately 50 miles west of Roanoke, where the colonists were planning on moving to. This is also a location supposedly visited by colonists in the original Lane colony. Examination of these patches found they were covering a symbol representing a fort in an area now called Site X. So what was the ultimate fate of the lost colony? Were they all wiped out? Did they relocate somewhere else? Or did they assimilate with the Croatan tribe? New evidence currently being uncovered may just hold the answer. So you've made it this far, and I suppose you'd like to know what conclusion C4 Detective has come to regarding the potential fate of the lost colony of Roanoke. Here's the recap. Speculation that they assimilated with nearby native communities appears in writings as early as 1605. Investigations by the Jamestown colonists produced reports that they may have been massacred, and there were several stories of people with European features being seen in native villages in the 17th and 18th centuries. But do any of these clues actually give us a definitive answer? Well, we believe that the most likely theory of these is all of them. Let's break it down. First, even if the first Dare Stone isn't authentic, there are other reasonable implications that at least some of the colonists were killed by natives. Both the prior interactions with the mainland tribes that resulted in conflict, as well as Powhatan and other tribes' stories of a massacre carried out by natives, is indicative of this. Second, there are indications some of the colonists may have moved inland. Not only did they indicate to John White that this is the area they wanted to relocate to, but the previous Lane colony may have left things behind that the colonists would have needed due to dwindling supplies. However, the colonists only had a small boat at their disposal, incapable of transporting all of them, let alone their supplies. In 2017, archaeologists working at Site X found fragments of Tudor pottery and weapons, concluding that these findings indicate a small group of maybe a dozen or so colonists had resided peacefully in the area. While they have yet to rule out the possibility that these artifacts weren't brought to the area by the 1585 Lane colony, there are some indications that at least some of the missing colonists may have been there. Finally, it is still the most likely scenario that a significant portion of the colonists may have relocated to Croatoan Island. Not only was a message left behind indicating this, but this would have been a likely location to go to if the colonists had been struggling, due to the tribe being one of the few friendly in the area to the English. John Lawson's later trips to that island, indicating the native people there believe they partially descended from the Roanoke colonists, along with natives with European features in the area, seem to substantiate that claim. In recent years, Scott Dawson and other archaeologists working on Hatteras Island have discovered 16th century English artifacts at the location. While some have argued these discoveries could have been the result of trade with the Native Americans, some of the items discovered weren't ones commonly used for trade. Additionally, there were trash pits of English style that would indicate long-term residence. To further substantiate this theory, since 2005, DNA researchers and scientists have been testing the DNA of individuals claiming ancestral ties to the Roanoke colonists, including many who can trace their ancestry back to the early 17th century, who have surnames that match many of the lost colonists. In 2023, new comparisons have demonstrated links to genetic material extracted from historical artifacts and human remains found at the original colony site. Additionally, many of these individuals show Native American DNA, while modern-day tribes in the area have oral traditions stating they partially descended from the Roanoke colony. This all supports the idea that at least some of the colonists may have intermarried with native tribes. However, some historians have repeated the fact that there was no way for the Croatoan to have supported the entirety of the lost colony. Given the evidence demonstrating multiple likely outcomes for the lost colonists, although initially appearing unlikely that they would have split up, C4 detective believes that the best possible explanation is that the colonists did, in fact, divide themselves into different groups. This idea is further supported by the lack of ability by the colonists to transport everyone, including their supplies, to one location. It is therefore our belief that a portion of the colonists likely moved inland to where they intended following their landing at Roanoke. It is also our belief that those colonists who could not move inland due to their lack of capabilities relocated to Croatoan Island in order to await John White's return. When White never showed up, all the groups of colonists either died out for whatever reason or merged with local tribes. The lack of later contact with future settlers is not surprising, as we know that many people removed from European society by Native Americans for substantial periods of time, even if captured or enslaved, were reluctant to return. With successful integration, the assimilated colonists would have gradually exhausted their European supplies, including ammunition and clothing. Eventually, they would have discarded their European culture as native lifestyle became more convenient. John White himself indicated in writing before his death that he also believed in this scenario, as there was no evidence on Roanoke of a native attack. They appeared to leave the island in an orderly fashion, and they left a message behind indicating their location as White had instructed, without a cross indicating that it was under duress. In fact, in 1590, after returning to England, White wrote,
"I greatly joyed that I had safely found a certain token of their safe being at Croatoan."
While for some, the ultimate fate of the Roanoke colonists may never be definitively known without a smoking gun discovery of evidence, we believe that the current historical facts, recovered artifacts, and DNA analysis present the most likely scenario for the fate of the lost colony. Regardless, their disappearance still remains one of the most enduring mysteries in American history. Thanks again for watching. Now we need your help. Over 97% of those watching our videos are not subscribed. Please support our small channel and help us grow by subscribing to our channel and sharing our videos. In return, we promise to strive in producing topics that you want us to cover. Additionally, please follow us on Twitter X and contact us if you have any suggestions or evidence you want to provide to us. And if you like unsolved mysteries like this, please check out one of these other C4 detective videos. Until the next investigation, this is the Everyday Veteran, signing off.